is the new PAC-12 finished with adding members? Conference realignment is always in the news, so we're back here on the Big Mountain to keep you updated. Hey, JY back with the Big Mountain. Have some items here I want to talk about with the PAC. We've had several interviews over the past week or so, also some new reporting from John Canzano that we want to talk about. I'm going to talk about AD Scott Barnes there with Oregon State. He had some comments last week, as well as AD Ann McCoy and President Cantwell with Washington State. They also had some comments here last week. I want to talk about Utah State and the new AD they have hired there. And also membership. Is the PAC done adding members here for 2026? Let's start with some comments here by Washington State's athletic director McCoy and President Cantwell. They spoke last week on Inside WSU. And AD McCoy here spoke about building excitement within the community, about where the Cougar athletics is at today and in the future. Being new to this role here for her as the AD, she's out and about a lot more, she stated, than what she had been in the past. Gives her a chance to meet and interact with the community much more than she had done here in the past with her position at Washington State. She spoke about the decision to cut some of the track and field programming. She said she wishes the communication, both internally and externally, was done better than how it occurred. Had some pushback on that and how things kind of were rolled out there for Washington State. So something she learned early on in her tenure here as the director of athletics was just not so much the decision. She mentioned a lot of thought went into the decision, but how that was communicated and rolled out, she thought could have been better, and they will do better moving forward, she said. President Cantwell then talked about her trip to College Game Day here not too long ago and the importance of athletics to the university. Regarding the new PAC-12, she said that it's important to keep their eye on the opportunity. She stated the PAC is an iconic brand and at the same time a startup opportunity here moving forward. Again, we've heard Commissioner Gould talk about this being a startup conference many times. So yes, they're using this iconic branding, but absolutely a startup in what they're trying to do here moving forward into the future. I'll get to that here towards the end. I want to talk next about Oregon State's AD Barnes. He spoke about the PAC and said things are stabilizing. He stated that the final pieces on the media deal will be announced soon. They're also working on scheduling right now for the 26-27 year, and also working on where they're going to be playing their championship games in the sports that they sponsor. He acknowledged that there is a gap between the PAC-12 and the Power 4 conferences, and it's only now getting wider. It's kind of wider than ever. He believes that they need to put more of their current resources into revenue sharing and less in other areas. And he mentioned directly less into major facility projects and also endowments that aren't linked to current dollars. So shifting of the priorities of the budgets there for Oregon State, wants to see more resources going into rev share. He did confirm that there will not be a Civil War game played next year in 2026. It may begin again in 2027, and he would like to see a long-term series into the future. Both sides have interest, he said, in doing that. Just not going to happen here in 2026. There are hopes that they'll get that going again in 2027. On a podcast with Yogi Roth, he mentioned that the members of the new PAC are like-minded and cannot be risk adverse. That's right, they cannot be risk adverse, even though that's how higher ed is built. A lot of school presidents don't like to take risks. We're talking about public dollars in these public institutions, tax dollars. So they are somewhat risk adverse. But Barnes is saying they can't do that. He says they need to be calculated and roll the dice and see what they get with some of the decisions. Not all the time, but absolutely more risk, taking a little more risk than what they have maybe in the past. And he says all the members are willing to do that. So we'll see what that kind of can do for the PAC moving forward. He mentioned that they built a budget here for this past year at a 30% decrease in revenues, but he said that they actually saw record attendance in many sports last year. He didn't mention which sports those were. So clearly their revenues, at least last year, were over budget. They took a very conservative approach, as any good CPA or accountant would do when they're doing budgeting. And he said they cleared that 30% decrease at least. And said they were seeing records attendance. So that's good for the Beavs. As for future membership and the media announcements, it does appear that the PAC is basically finished here for the time being, at least for 2026-27. We know most of everything they're going to be doing here in year one of this new PAC. And, you know, as we've mentioned here many times, and A.D. Barnes here stated, the media deals here are about done. He said there's some final pieces that should be announced soon. So we know the PAC is with CBS. We know the PAC is with the CW. It sounds like they're going to have one or two probably lower level tertiary partners coming in to this, but that's where they're at moving forward. On Tuesday, Canzano reported that the PAC is finished adding football members for now. So they're going to go forward here in their 26 football season with 8 members. Of course, that means they're going to have 7 in-conference games and 5 out-of-conference games. That's very different than what you're seeing a lot of the conferences move to. Of course, the Big Ten has been playing 9 conference games. The SEC is going to 9 conference games. So the PAC is at kind of an outlier here, only having 7 in-conference games for 26-27. Canzano did mention that there could be the possibility of a scheduling agreement with another conference. We'll have to wait and see if that gets solidified. Of course, we know how reporting on the PAC has gone. Lots of reporting, very little action that actually comes out, and additional members and everything else. So I'm not going to put a ton of stock into what that may look like. Of course, the Mountain West would make the most sense, but I don't see that happening. I think the 5 departing members absolutely want to distance themselves from the Mountain West, from their former conference, at least for the short term here and for the next few years. You know, they keep pushing that Power 5 type status, and they don't want to, I don't think, have a conference agreement or scheduling agreement with the Mountain West, although it would be the most, make the most sense financially, right? We're on the West Coast. We have more limited teams out there. We'll see who it is. The only thing I will say about membership, we've been reporting for 9 months now that St. Mary's is all but done, locked in to the PAC. Of course, that's not a football member, so none of this new reporting really affects St. Mary's. I talked about St. Mary's last week as there was some smoke to the Mountain West. I think that's just them kind of playing different sides of the coin. If they move anywhere, I believe it's going to be the Pac-12. That may be the last movement that you see for the PAC here in the next year or two, and then we'll see what happens after that. So I want to hear from you guys. I mean, we know the vast majority of everything that they're doing now. We know membership. We know football membership 100%, according to this new reporting. We know most of the media deal. I want to hear from you in the comments. How do you think this rebuild went? You know, what grade would you give it? Do you feel like this is a transformative type of atmosphere in terms of their media partners? That was a lot of what they said here over the past year or so. They wanted transformation. Do you believe you're seeing that here? Are you happy with where membership's at? Would you like to see them be more aggressive with membership? Again, just put some comments down in the bottom. I'd love to hear, or in the comment section, would love to hear from you guys, as it looks like we're about done with a PAC rebuild here for the 26-27 year. Want to hear what you guys have to say. So it's been a little bit since we talked about the Pac-12. Of course, the USU, Utah State, has hired a new AD. I just did an update on that yesterday, so I'll direct you to that if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about the new Utah State athletic director. With that, hey, I thank you guys for watching this update. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe if you like our content, and I'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.